Hey boys and girls, I hope you like the painting that we're going to be getting our inspiration from, Monet's Water Lilies. If those look familiar to you, very good. We're going to do things a little bit different because this time it's going to be a three-dimensional painting, which means that there's going to be parts of our painting that come up off of our paper. So I'm going to start you off with the first couple steps. Now, for this first part, you're going to need 2 pieces of white paper. I would put something on the table just in case. You're going to need some salt, believe it or not. You're going to need some watercolor paints, a little bit of water, and a paintbrush. So first, we are actually going to make the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to get a little bit of blue onto my brush. And I'm going to do a gentle wash of blue across the top of my paper. Now, we want to make sure we use a good amount of water because the water is going to react with the salt we're going to be spreading onto our painting. And what's going to happen is the salt is going to actually melt into the water. It's a little chemical reaction, and it makes a beautiful watery effect. So we don't want to use too much water because you don't want to rip your paper, but we can be a little bit generous with the water today. Sometimes I remind you not to use too much water because you don't want to soak the paper, but today might actually kind of be a good thing. So first, I'm going to cover the paper completely with blue. And this is going to be the water below the water lily. And this paper we're going to keep intact, meaning we're not actually going to be cutting this one up unlike the other ones. And I'm going to go back and forth. And if you notice, boys and girls, I'm taking my paintbrush and I'm going back and forth in the same direction across my paper, nice and gentle. Good, smooth strokes. I'm going to make sure I get all these little areas of white. So I have this beautiful blue. Now, if you really want, you could actually mix a tiny bit of purple into your blue to get a little bit of a darker blue if you wanted to do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up. I've just got a tiny bit left. And then the next step is a very important one. Now, Monet was very well known for his paintings of water lilies. And if that painting looked familiar, it's because he actually made dozens of paintings of water lilies. There isn't just one. There are many paintings of water lilies he has made, and they're actually very, very big paintings. All right, so the next step is this. You're going to take your brush and make sure it's wet. Doesn't need paint on it this time. And you're going to run the wet brush over your paper to get it moist. We don't want it soaked, but we definitely need it a little bit wetter than normal. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a tiny amount of salt, not too much. And we are going to sprinkle it onto our paper. And we have to do this kind of quick before the paper dries. And it's just a tiny little sprinkle. Doesn't have to be too much. If you get more than you bargained for, that's okay. It is a fun process. Now, right now, there's really nothing going on this paper. And I'll tell you why. Because the water needs time to react. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully pick up my paper and move it somewhere where it can dry. And it's going to take some time. But the salt crystals will eventually make the paper look like water, like little bits of water reflecting off the surface of the water, little bits of sunlight. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and start my next piece of paper. This paper is going to be the petals of your flower. So this paper is very, very important. What you're going to do is you're going to fill it with color, and then we're going to cut it out. So I'm going to pick some bright colors. You can pick any color for your flower. Some people like to use purples. Some people like to use reds and oranges. It's really kind of up to you. The goal is to just make sure we have a lot of bright color on our paper. And I'm actually going to paint this the opposite way. So before we were going across. Now I actually want to start in the corner and go all the way down. Now, if my paper looks a little bit bigger than yours, don't worry about that. As long as your pieces are the same size, that's all that matters. Now, I actually want to add a little touch of orange into my petals too. So I'm going to add a little bit of orange. So there's a little bit of extra color. So you could mix a color in there if you really wanted to, but we want to make sure we have very, very pretty color for our flower. And remember, you don't have to use red like I am. If you wanted to use purple, you could use purple. If you wanted to use yellow, you could use yellow. It's really up to you. Whatever you think will stand out really nicely against the blue and the green. Because remember, we do have to make a lily pad as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go all the way across my paper. And this is where it's important to have something protecting your table so we don't make a mess. But luckily it is watercolor paint. Now, if you don't have salt at home or, you're just running low, don't worry about the salt part. You can just do the blue for the previous paper. I'm going to go all the way across. Now, this paper, I'm not going to add salt to. I am just going to let this one air dry. And once it is completely covered, I am done with this step. Now, just like with the water, this one needs to dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to gently pick this up and move it to a new spot. And I will see you guys in a minute for the next step.